Hey, what's going on, guys? Coach Connor here with another episode of Strength Coach Rants, and this week we're going to be talking about agility. So after a 2-week hiatus, we're back. Got a lot of things going on. Business is starting to pick up, so life kind of got in the way. But here we are. We're back, and today we're going to talk about agility. So you may be wondering, what is agility? Well, Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines it as the ability to move quickly and easily, or the ability or state of being agile. And they define agile as the ability to move your body quickly and easily. Now, if you're on social media a lot and you see a lot of these facilities, we have a few local ones that are very similar. You watch their stories and their posts, you'd think agility is mostly running around cones and obstacle courses and things like that, agility ladders. In reality, that couldn't be further from the truth. It's not just the ability to move your feet quickly. It's the ability of you to direct your hips or center of mass in any given direction, right? So this isn't just quick feet. It involves a whole myriad of other things. It's really your ability to accelerate, decelerate, and then reaccelerate, and that takes strength, power, speed, proper angles, positioning, core strength. There's a lot of things that go into agility that kind of get overlooked in favor of doing obstacle courses and running around cones and things of that nature. And today we're going to talk about kind of what gets done and how to clean that up. How do we create more agility in ourselves and our athletes? And we're gonna go over that now. All right, so how do we get more agile? How do I increase the agility levels and the agileness, if that's really a word, of my athletes when they're in my care, or myself if I'm an athlete trying to get better? Well, for starters, we have to get stronger. Putting more force in the ground, being able to react off that force, and being able to handle more force is going to have a direct correlation with our ability to change direction and be what most people think of when they think of an agile athlete, somebody that's shifty, that can kind of weave in and out of traffic on the field of play. We have to have those things. Those are probably number one when it comes to most athletes, especially athletes with a low training age. If we can get them stronger and more resilient, they're going to be able to create better angles. All the things that we need for agility, they're going to be able to create those things. All right. We need to focus on creating better angles in our movement. We have to get conditioned to creating these proper angles through, repetition and slowing movements down. So if I want somebody to be better at crossing over, changing direction, I've got to get them comfortable in positions where they're going to be able to do that. So we can do some single leg outside edge jumps, things of that nature. If we're just talking about opening up and, without a crossover, we can do some inside edge jumps, things that are still creating the angles that we need and the body positioning that we need, but that are slowed down enough where the athlete can think about what they're doing. And as an added bonus, these jumps and things like that are going to have an impact on how powerful they are, because they're creating proper angles and we're directing force at the angles that we need to get better on the field of play. Another one is to learn to use the edges of your feet. A lot of athletes just haven't been exposed to this kind of training, so they don't really understand keeping square hips and utilizing your glutes and having your hips outside your feet by using the outside edge of your feet instead of externally rotating the hip and opening up the foot. We can get these athletes comfortable utilizing the edges of their feet like you would on the ice. I'll take this back to hockey because, again, wheelhouse. We're taught at a very young age when we skate to use the edges of our feet because we have to, right? You can't really open up your hip and create any power in the direction you're going to go, because I guess you can get up on the balls of your feet, right? Because skates all have a rocker, but you're not going to be nearly as efficient as if you just stayed square and use the edges of your feet. We can do this same thing on dry land. So we always, a lot of the athletes that I have, when we just get into what's considered lateral movement or agility type training, we do a lot of edge work on the feet, and that's just getting them comfortable understanding that they can push off different parts of their foot, the inside edge, the outside edge, just like they would if they were going in a linear direction. We teach them to be on the balls of their feet because that's what creates the right angles for the direction that they're trying to go. Same thing with lateral side-to-side movement. Get them comfortable utilizing the edges of their feet instead of spinning their foot and their hips in directions that we don't want them to go. We got to work on body positioning. So we've got to create better angles, right? When we're sprinting straight ahead, if you see track athletes, right, when they're running the 100-meter, they're in the blocks and they've created angles, right? They're trying to go that way. They've created angles like this so that when they drive in the ground, their body goes in the proper direction. We got to do that same thing when we're moving laterally. So we've got to get our athletes comfortable having their hips outside their center of mass, or their hips outside of their feet. It takes a little while to get comfortable doing that. And early on, you'll see a lot of false steps because we're just trying to we're trying to be in a comfortable position. So creating those better angles and better body positions. It includes, but it's not limited to proper leans, learning how to have your hips outside your feet, and just getting comfortable in those positions. Lateral movement's very similar to linear speed. We're trying to create angles in the direction that we want our body to go. And in order for my hips to go here, right, I've got to have my hips outside my feet. I can't be straight up and down because every time I put force in the ground, I'm going to drive up. So it's like preemptively getting them comfortable with their hips outside of their feet, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. All right, this last one's actually really important, and it applies to everything. We've got to start thinking of delivering force into the ground. Too many times when we do lateral jumps, I see it really often, and I see it with kids in my gym as well, and we just have to correct them out of it. We're jumping sideways. They want to jump really far. So what are they going to do? They're going to jump in a way that their foot is going to get the farthest away that it can, right? So in their head, they think they're creating more distance by reaching with their foot. A lot of times you'll even see like a little bit of a hinge and then a foot kick instead of like dropping their butt and actually jumping out. So we've got to kind of get out of this mindset that they've got to jump like a certain distance. Don't give them like, we're going from this cone and this cone is like 2.5 yards away. They've got to make it to that cone, because what they're going to do is compensate to get into those positions. We need to deliver to them, like put force in the ground, and your body's going to end up going where it goes. As long as I create the right angles, I'm going to head in the direction I want to go, but I don't want to reach with my foot, because that's not like honest movement. That's in my head. I think I've gotten farther, but in reality, my hips, right, are so far outside of where my feet are that when I hit the ground, it's going to take me longer to decelerate and then reaccelerate and get out. So we want to drive our hips, and the easiest way to do that is just to tell them to push into the ground as hard as they can while creating that angle, and their body will end up where it ends up. Over time, they'll get more efficient at the movement and they'll become stronger. Hopefully, they're in the gym getting stronger as well, not just doing movement. And that'll have an impact on them getting further, right? So don't give them a distance that they have to cover. Tell them to put force in the ground and drive out as hard as they can at the proper angles, and their body's going to end up where it ends up, and that's okay. One little side note here, actually, this just kind of came to mind. When we're doing change of direction drills, right? So you've done all the groundwork of getting them in better positions, teaching them body positioning and lean, edge work, all that stuff. When they go to change directions within a drill, like say you're doing like a 5-10-5, don't have them like we have to touch the line, because this is the dumbest thing. I don't understand why I take that back. I understand why sports coaches do it, because they're trying to instill like touching the line and following through and doing the things that you're supposed to do and not being lazy. But when we're training, right, we can control every single variable. Why am I going to box them in to having to touch a line? There's no sport where we have to physically reach down and touch a line, or that we have to cover a specific distance, right? Outside of like track and field, you have to run 100 meters, but you don't have to run 100 and stop on a dime. You get to decelerate yourself. So when you're doing these change of directions, and I'll use a 5-10-5 or like a 60-yard shuttle, like don't force them to touch the line. They're going to get out of position, right? They're going to break at the hips. They're going to probably round in their upper back, reaching down, trying to touch that line. 2, you'll see they'll stutter step, right? Because they want to get into a good position. So they'll stutter step and like slow themselves down. We don't want that. We just want them to be in a good position. So I always tell them, use the cone or the line as a guide. I don't care if you stop short. I don't care if you go past the line. Like, we want to control our body positioning more than anything else, right? If them stopping, let's say we're doing like a 60-yard shuttle, if they touch like the 4, or if their foot rather touches the 4.5-yard mark, versus the 5, like who cares? That doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Are they changing direction in a better position? That's what matters. So stop with the touch the line. It's the dumbest thing when it comes to being off the field of play outside of in a team training environment where you're trying to hold, your athletes accountable. It's the dumbest thing. Give them like an area that they have to stop within. And that way they'll make sure that they're focusing on body positioning instead of, well, I better touch this line or I'm going to get in trouble. All right, so it's just kind of an aside there. I think it kind of goes along with what we're talking about, but stop with the line thing. Give them a general area to slow down at, and if they go past it, great. If they go short of it, great. But focus on what really matters within this training session. All right, so we've gone over like how to become more agile, and there's a lot more to it. We're really just kind of skimming the surface here, and we'll kind of box all this up and package it neatly at the very end. But now we're going to talk about like how we don't become more agile. All right. The first one is conditioning, right? I see it a lot. We do a lot of lateral movement in conditioning form, whether that's running like 300s or 60-yard shuttles or 5-10 5s. We don't want to condition in an effort to become more agile. It's counterproductive. It's, how well do you move first off when you're exhausted? Like not very well. You're never going 100%. You can say you do, but you don't. If I know I got to run 16 110s, I'm not running all that hard on the first couple, right? Or the ones in the middle. I've got 16. I got to leave something in the tank. If I'm doing Herbies on the ice, right, and I'm doing like 4 or 5 of them, I'm not going all out in the first one. I got to leave some in the tank. If I'm going all out, there's no chance I recover for the next 4, and I'm going to end up getting yelled at by my coach, so I'm going to pull the chute a little bit and go a little bit slower. We're trying to learn new movement skill. Agility and lateral movement are movement skills. It's learning better positioning, learning to use the edges of your feet. It's learning to be comfortable outside, like with your center of mass, outside of being directly over your feet. So there's a lot of things that goes into it that are movement skill based, and we cannot obtain new skill when we're exhausted. We just can't do it. So if you're using like 60-yard shuttles as a way to like teach lateral movement, right, and body positioning and quote unquote agility, we got to stop doing that. All right, those agility ladders are also not a very good way to become more agile. Like they are void of anything that resembles what should be considered agility because we're not moving our hips anywhere. Taking a lot of steps with your feet that really aren't going anywhere. And we talked about this in the very beginning. If I want to become more agile, I've got to become stronger because my ability to be agile is my ability to accelerate, decelerate, and reaccelerate. If my feet are going really fast and I'm not producing any force, then it's not going to make me more agile. It looks cool, right, to be able to move your feet really fast and do these like crazy looking like movement patterns that have absolutely no carryover to the field of play. But it's not increasing your agility. There is one exception that I will say. I've worked at facilities where we did like double agility ladder where we had to create leans and use the edges of our feet. And it's a great teaching tool, right? So doing a crossover icky shuffle or even an icky shuffle is going to teach you to kind of utilize the outside and inside edges of your feet and create a body lean in the direction that we want to go. That's all conducive to becoming more agile. So outside of that, agility ladders really don't do much as far as you becoming more agile. They can condition you, they can teach you some neat new movement patterns, but they don't allow you to react off the ground and they don't allow you to really deliver any force into the ground. All right, next time you're watching somebody do an agility ladder, watch what happens with their hips as their feet are going. They don't move all that far, right? So agility ladders aren't the way to go. Neither are these like dot drills and things like that. Those are not, again, conducive to agility, moving my feet really quickly without my hips going anywhere. Again, doesn't really have anything to do with agility. What it can do is, so on the field of play, there's no time where your feet move really fast without your hips going anywhere outside of you going to false step to get yourself in a better position. So if we can teach our athletes and ourselves to be in better body positions, create proper leans, things like that, they won't have to move their feet really fast, right? So agility ladders become just void of any purpose outside of, I think they're good for warm-ups. They can help change things up. I know an 80 warm-up gets really monotonous over time. I'm sure my athletes here are absolutely exhausted of doing them, but they work. You can throw an agility ladder in for something like that, and I think that can be fun. I had Pete Friesen. He was a guy I worked with when I was back with USA Hockey. he would have athletes utilize agility ladders while having himself hold up numbers, and they had to count out loud like how many fingers he was holding up. And I thought that was great. It teaches the athletes to be comfortable with what they're doing with their feet while they're able to kind of maintain eye contact with something that's eye level, i.e. being on the field of play and being able to scan the field while you're moving around. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's a pretty neat trick and drill, and it can be beneficial in that way. But if we're talking about becoming more agile, agility ladders are not the way to do it. And again, those dot drills and cone drills and running around hurdles and doing all that stuff does not increase agility in any way, shape, or form. So we need to stop utilizing for that. If you're just trying to have fun with your athletes and let them kind of do something that's outside the box and outside something that they would normally do, that's more than okay. You can make training fun, make it a competition. That's cool. But let's do all that stuff after we've created better angles, allowed them to use the inside-outside edges of their feet, got them comfortable in the positions they need to be in, become stronger, right? Those are the things that we need to increase this agility, not, these stupid circus drills that we do. All right, one more thing here. We need to understand with agility that it's where our hips end up, right? Our center of mass in our hips, not where our feet go. So in an effort to get more agile, I don't want to be doing drills where I'm reaching with my feet. We talked about it earlier. I want to worry about putting force in the ground. That is rule number one. I'm going to put more force in the ground, and if I'm at a good angle, my hips are going to go where they're supposed to go. So try to drill into your athletes' heads that you're pushing force into the ground, and then the ground's reacting back through us, and we're going in a certain direction based on the angles that we produce with our body. So stop reaching, stop thinking feet, start thinking hips and center mass. One more quick thing here, and then we'll sign off. I actually got to get home and let my dog out. We need to kind of differentiate between creating agility and displaying agility, right? And that goes back to what I was talking about before. So running like a 5-10-5 or a 60-yard shuttle is a good way to display that agility that we've created. But if we want them to become more agile, we can't utilize those drills in an effort to do so. It's got to be broken all the way down to like the very basics of edge work, body positioning, force production, force acceptance, all that kind of stuff. So if you're looking for a way to be better, right, and be more agile, then just take a look at what you need in that, right? So it's not like running 60-yard shuttles and getting faster at those. If you get more agile and you're better at changing directions, then you'll be better at that. These pre-sequenced drills that we do are good to kind of break down the movement and allow the athlete to be in better positions. But for the most part, they're displays of agility. We've got to work on the things that are going to create that more of that agility. So I sound like a broken record here. I feel like I said agility 5 times in the last minute. So don't think of displaying agility as increasing your agility. It's your ability to move is the reason why you're better at those drills, if that makes any sense. It's a lot like being in the gym and consistently going for a 1-rep max. Sure, there's a training effect to that. Undoubtedly, you will get some level of stronger if you consistently hit 1-rep maxes. There's a lot more to it than that. You can't just progressively overload with 1-rep maxes in the same movement. It doesn't work that way. You'll backtrack at some point. But that's a display of strength as opposed to obtaining it, right? So the same thing happens with agility. So get out of the habit of all right, we're going to work on agility today, so we're going to run 60-yard shuttles or 5-10-5s. That's a display of agility, not increasing it. So break it down to the things that need to happen, and that's how we increase that. Then we can display it with these drills. Hopefully that made sense. That's going to be it for today. Hopefully you learned something about agility and how to obtain it. And why we need to work on obtaining it instead of displaying it. If you have any other questions, my contact is always in the description here. I'm Connor at theldsp.com, home of the Lions Den Sports Performance here in Wesley Chapel. We'll see you next week. I think we're going to be talking about linear speed, so it goes very similar with what we were talking about today. The topics will just be slightly different, but it's a lot of the same stuff. Hope you guys have a good week.